All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and take a look at this debate between Biden and Trump. Okay. Now, I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible. Okay. I do have biases, all right, but I'm going to try and set those aside and just focus on the arguments being made and not the person making the arguments. Okay. And if you guys disagree with anything I say, like, that's what the comment section is for. I will be in the comments. I will be, having discussions and talking to you guys. So feel free to write in there whatever you want.
Party's presumptive nominees, a first in American history. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world to our studios in Atlanta. This is the CNN presidential debate.
This debate is being produced by CNN and is coming to you live on CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, CNN Max, and CNN Espanol. This is a pivotal moment between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in their rematch for the nation's highest office. Each will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two candidates tonight. Before we introduce them, we want to share the rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determined their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Folks, how are you? Great to be here. Thank you.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs.
Yeah, so whenever I hear, people talking about this, right? The inflation, the prices, all that stuff, it's all Biden's fault. There's a couple of things that I usually say to them, right? One of the things is we have to remember the pandemic, right? We also have to remember all the stimulus checks that were given out. We also have to remember, like, almost everything was shut down for a long time, right? And that happened under Trump. And I think a lot of the problems we're experiencing is still stemming from that. We're still trying to come back from that. So a certain portion of the inflation is understandable. A portion of it, though, because, I also have to wonder, could a different president have, you know, bounced us back faster than what Joe Biden is doing, right? So that's another important element we have to consider.
Employment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still...
So, a couple of things here. One thing I forgot to mention, a second ago. Even if Joe Biden is doing a terrible job, like all the conservatives and Republicans keep telling us, right? Is that all these problems are because of Biden, then where are all the, Republicans in the White House? Where are they? Why aren't they speaking out and telling us, they could be, but I haven't seen it. Why aren't they, all over TV, all over social media? Here's the bills he's passing that are bad. Here's what's creating the inflation that it's not necessary. Where are those reports? Okay, that's what I want to see. The other thing is Trump messed up the pandemic, okay? Before anyone ever knew exactly what it was, if it was real, if it, what was going on, he comes out and says it's a hoax created by the Democrats, right? Then he goes from that to saying, "Oh, it's going to go away once everything warms up. Not going to be a problem." Instead of actually letting people do the research first and then coming out and saying, here's what the situation is. Here's what we need to do to start coming back from this, right? Before he ever knew anything for sure, he just started saying whatever came to his mind. I think the best response would have been, we don't know yet. There's rumors that there's a pandemic. There's reports, there's this, there's that. We're getting the best scientists to look at it and see, and we're going to, hear them out and see what they recommend. Is this real or is it fake, right? And then go from there. Like, that's what a president should be doing. But instead, he at one point said he's a cheerleader for the country, right? But we don't need a cheerleader. We needed a president who was going to tell us the truth, not sugarcoat it and try and keep everyone in good spirits. And ultimately, I think that's why we had such a hard time with it.
Country, but other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world.
Well, he's definitely not been paying attention. Okay. At this point, I think even most liberals would also agree with this. Okay. By him making that statement, it just goes to show that he has not been paying attention. Okay. Anytime I watch a reaction video, I watch a, reporter or journalist or anyone, if they're talking about the economy and the differences between Trump and Biden, it always comes down to everything was a lot better under Trump. Everything is so much worse under Biden. Now, I think that needs to be a nuanced discussion, right? Because there's a lot of different elements that should be discussed when, we're addressing that. But the bottom line is things are so much worse, than they were before. Now, is that all directly Joe Biden's fault? I don't know. And that's the point. That's the main thing we need to understand here is that, and I know a lot of people are going to see this. They're probably going to write in the comments, this is all Joe Biden's fault. And if you're going to say that, then I'm going to ask you to explain, right? And try and give as much detail and as much proof as possible.
And, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only...
I do know there was someone, I don't remember who it was, but I watched it recently, and they were saying that, just as many, average workers receive the same tax cut as all the, top 1% or whatever, right?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. Now, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing. And they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years under both of your administrations,
So I definitely want to hear Joe Biden respond to that. Now, a lot of people talks about like all mainstream media, that they're all biased, right? That they're all in support of, the left, and they like never criticize anyone on the left, all right? But that is simply not true. Now, NBC, I think it was, NBC, did coverage of the Afghanistan withdrawal, and they said it was the most embarrassing day in U.S. history. Okay. Now, with them saying that, I don't know how anyone could go so far as to say NBC never criticizes the left, right? Because they definitely did.
Not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation.
Now, with all due respect, Trump has done the same thing, right? He told Hillary, if I become president, you will be in jail. What about all the lock her up chants, right? So that's his political opponent that he wanted to see arrested, right? Now, of course, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, she committed a lot of crimes, so she should be arrested. And I say to you then, what would have been a much better thing for him to say is, I will make sure that your crimes are investigated and that you are prosecuted based on those crimes, right? Because if he has the evidence, if he knows what the evidence is, then he should be turning that over to the FBI or turning it over to someone, right? And saying, look, here's the smoking gun. Here's what y'all need to have.
If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence, and it's a shame.
All right, so, I've had discussions about this recently. People saying that, just like Cat Williams, right, went to Joe Rogan's show, and he was talking to him and saying, oh, they're giving them housing, they're giving them, money and all this other stuff. And, Trump saying they're giving them Social Security. Well, where's the proof? That's what I need to see, right? Is the proof that that's actually going on. And I would also think there would be a phone number, there would be a website, there would be some information that would say, if you are an illegal immigrant, call this number and we will give you, housing, shelter, Social Security, food stamps. Like, we'll give it all to you. Where is that information?
Overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However,
so here's what I want to know. What is an emergency abortion? I've said this before, and I've had quite a few people disagree with me, but I really don't think I'm wrong, right? If you're talking about a medical procedure because of a risk to, either the baby or the mom, either one, right? In an emergency situation, that's not an abortion. And the difference is, in that situation, right? Even though it may be a premature birth or whatever else, it's still not an abortion because the doctors are still going to do everything they can to save the life of both the mother and the baby, right? It's much different than an abortion. So should it be treated the same? Both the mother, the doctors, and everyone wants to see the mother and the baby both survive. That's not an abortion. So what do they mean by emergency abortion? I've also heard this argument that you can't be, and this is Candace Owens, by the way, you can't be pro-life and pro-death penalty at the same time because those are two contradictory things, right? But I strongly disagree with her, and I'm going to explain why. First of all, being pro-life is advocating for the most innocent, and being pro-death penalty is advocating for the most guilty to be punished for their crimes. Okay? So those are two totally different things. And you can also say all life is precious, but with a few exceptions, right? People who want to take the lives of other people, who want to go and cause harm to other people, right? In many different capacities. You could make an exception for those and say, yeah, those people's lives don't matter, right? But you could still say all life is precious, except with a few exceptions.
the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. But you have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
And, that is a great point, but those problems can be dealt with, like, pretty much immediately, right? Like, in most cases, whenever a situation like that would happen, like, they're going to know right away, right, if that's something that they want to do. So a simple pill would take care of that. And I know a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but, all life is precious. That, the child's life is innocent and we should protect those. And I agree. But I would say in extreme situations, right, that might be a necessary thing to do, right? If you're talking about someone who's underage and had been attacked, if you're talking about, any number of the most extreme situations, that might be the best thing to do. But I think it should always be down to a doctor, a physician, a psychiatrist, of someone going on record and saying this is, in my opinion, the best course of action, right? Because of the frailty of the mother, because of whatever else. That's what it should depend on. It shouldn't be just, I want an abortion. Okay, great, let's do that. It should not be that way. So, yes, I am pro-life.
President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states.
First of all, how moronic of a statement is that, right? If you are engaging in that activity and you're not taking any precautions at all, guess what? It should always be on your mind that that could happen, right? So you're going to be taking tests. You're going to be, keeping an eye on everything that's going on around you. And if you're not, guess what? That's your fault. That's literally your fault. That is an adult activity you're engaging in, and that comes with adult responsibilities. Now, just to go ahead and get you guys to understand the double standard here, okay? I've seen it many times. A guy will go in to court, he'll tell the judge over his child support, I don't have the money. I'm not ready to take care of this child. I'm not ready to do this. I'm not, I'm only 18. I'm only 19. I don't even have a job. And what's that judge going to tell him every single time? You helped create that child. Now you're going to help take care of that child. But when a mother comes in and says the same thing, I'm not ready to be a mother, I can't handle this, oh, that's okay, you can just have an abortion. It's a double standard, and a lot of people seem to not understand another aspect of this. They'll say, hey, you know, men can't create children, so they have no right to tell, a woman what they can and can't do with their own bodies. I understand the concept of that, right? Because it is their bodies and whatever else. But here's the thing. They can't produce a child without a man being involved, right? There's still a man, there's still a father that should have the right to say, no, you are not going to just abort our child, right? That's not going to happen. Both parties should be involved, and, and it shouldn't be a double standard. Like I said, unless it's the most extreme situation, and unless there's a doctor on record saying, yes, this is, medically necessary, and they should have to give valid reasons for that too, based on, medical facts.
There's a lot of young women by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people.
And like I said, in situations like that, they're going to know immediately they have a problem, right? And whenever they go to the hospital to report it and everything else, that's the first thing they're going to discuss with them, or one of the first things, right? Is the plans in case, that has taken course, right?
This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I support Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it.
That's true. He was given a very specific question. Would he establish a timeline in which he would say, no, beyond this point, you cannot do that? He dodged that question for sure. And now Trump is calling him out on it, right? So, with this debate right here specifically, Trump is winning.
So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion.
And like I said before, in that kind of emergency situation, that is not an abortion, right? That is an emergency delivery, right? If that's what the situation calls for, then they're going to do that, but they're also going to try and save the life of both people, right? It's not going to be, oh, the mother's life's in jeopardy. Let's do an abortion and let's kill the baby. Let's make sure the baby can't survive. No, that's not what's going to happen in that situation.
Period. Period. Period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, Constitutional Scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this.
How many years did the Supreme Court uphold slavery? This argument falls flat on its face, right? Just because, the Constitution, the Supreme Court, just because that has upheld a certain thing for a long time, does not mean they were right.
Guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record.
I would have liked to hear Trump say, and we can still do some research into this, that there is at least, a small degree of exceptions for extreme situations, right? If a doctor goes on record and says this is a medically necessary procedure, then hopefully that would be a much different situation than just someone saying, hey, I'd like to have an abortion.
Number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch, overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law.
Wasn't that happening under Obama too? Like, that's what I've heard a lot of times, right? It was like, like that was something that pretty much all presidents have done. Was the separation, that whole thing, like that all was going on under Obama as well.
What's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest.
I'm actually going to rewind it real quick because I'm not sure what he said either. Let's see. Let's see if we can figure out what he was talking about.
Initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
More Border Patrol and asylum officers. So look, instead of having a wall to keep them from coming in, he wants more Border Patrol, right? And before I did my own research, I would have said, yeah, that's the way to go. That's absolutely. Just get more Border Patrol, right? Well, here's the problem with that. I did research into it and I looked. Looking at what the situation is like at our borders, yeah, Trump is right on that. We definitely need a wall. And if there's anyone watching this who thinks I'm wrong, that, oh, we don't need a border wall, I'll do a video. I'll go through and show you guys why I say Trump's right about that. There's a lot of things Trump is right about. It's just, he has a lot of character flaws. That's what I'm going to say. He has a lot of character flaws. And, I personally just don't like the guy. Like I said, I have my biases. I don't like the guy. I don't like Biden either. I wish we had someone else in there going up against Trump. And I can tell you this, I saved a video from Fox News, and it looks like from the title, a lot of people are freaking out on the left. Okay? So a lot of people are saying, Trump won, Trump won. They may be right. I may end up agreeing with them, but we still got a long ways to go. And we are almost an hour in, so this is going to do it for part one. I'm going to break these up into parts, and I'm also going to be, shortening down the videos as much as possible. So I'm going to be doing quite a few different things to try and be in compliance with fair use laws. Okay. So, alright, I will see you guys back for part 2